Thank you very much for joining us. Finally, big bang news for India's real estate industry. The Real Estate Regulation and Development Bill that proposes to set up a regulator for the industry has received the approval of the Union Cabinet. I've stopped counting on the number of times it actually came back and didn't even meet a cabinet level approval. A big development for this industry that could pave way for greater transparency in transactions, empowering the common home seeker. That's something that we've been lobbying for the longest time on the show. It will ensure fair play in this highly competitive sector. Let's get straight across to Oinita Moja, who's tracking all the developments at the cabinet meet. Oini, first of all, take us through this big development. It's finally through the cabinet. What transpired? What really happened? How did it make it through the cabinet?
Well, Manisha, absolutely right. A big victory, in fact, for Ajay Maken himself, because we all know that there has been a lot of opposition to several of the provisions of the bill when it came before the cabinet last time round. Very senior cabinet ministers strongly opposing several provisions of the bill, but finally today the cabinet has given the clearance to the real estate regulator bill here. So now what happens next is that the bill will be introduced in the next session of Parliament, where it will be debated upon, and then finally, after both houses of Parliament clear the bill, it will become a legislation. Now, definitely, as you have mentioned, a very competitive sector, but definitely the clearing of the bill is good news for the consumers, particularly because most of the provisions of the bill is skewed towards the consumer, safeguarding all the things that are required for a consumer when they go for buying a plot of land or buying flat or a house. Now, to briefly talk about the provisions of the bill, first, it clearly defines carpet area. It also prohibits sale of houses or flats on the basis of super area, because according to the government, this is very ambiguous. Now, also, there are strict provisions in the bill that the project developers will have to get the statutory clearances first. All kinds of clearances has to be in place. These has to be put up on the website before they can go ahead and even advertise for the projects, let alone going ahead and starting the construction for the projects. So there are also penal provisions in the legislation. But coming back to your question about what transpired in the cabinet, it seems that it has been a unanimous decision this time round to clear the legislation, because the government is aware that this piece of legislation is very important. It is a significant piece of legislation for the real estate sector. Back to you, Manisha.
Oini, any changes, any kind of disagreements, or it went through in its current form with all the key points that we've been wanting or the consumer has been asking for?
Manisha, what I have picked up so far is that the bill has been cleared, but about the nitty-gritties of if there is going to be any changes to any of the provisions, we will have to wait for an official word there. We are expecting an official briefing later in the evening. So maybe by then we will have a clearer picture of if there will be any changes to the bill.
All right, tell me, how long did it take for the cabinet to clear it? That will give us a good picture whether there was a lot of debate and there were some changes made. If it was a 15-minute meeting, then probably it's gone through in its current form. Right, Oini?
Well, Manisha, in fact, there were some of the big ticket decisions which were to be taken by the cabinet. There was the food security bill, there was the real estate legislation, also the Vodafone reconciliation case was before the cabinet and the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, which just concluded. In fact, it took almost 1.5 hours for the cabinet to discuss all of these issues. So we understand that the regulator legislation took at least half an hour to 45 minutes of the cabinet's time for them to come to a decision and finally clear the legislation. Manisha?
All right, Oinitum, thank you so much for briefing us on what happened today. But clearly, I'm so glad at least it's through the cabinet. Neeraj Bansal, partner, real estate and construction, KPMG India, and Pankaj Bajaj, managing director, Eldeco Group. Gentlemen, first reaction, Neeraj, you've got a big smile. Pankaj, At least for the audience, you need to bring the smile. Neeraj,
No,
good
sure.
move?
I think it's a good move. It was something which is long awaited from industry perspective. Certainly, I mean, as a developer, because of the fact that the provisions in the law and the experience that we have had in the past, that we create certain provisions which are not really good enforced, or it are difficult to kind of practically administer as well. So that's perhaps the reason why we got half smile from Pankaj from that side of it. But if you look at it from industry, overall goodness for the industry side of it, certainly we needed from the sector perspective a transparency and accountability, and also a regulator in that sense of it, from the point of view of saying bringing the laws together and ensuring there is a fairness which is granted from a consumer perspective over there. Because certainly from industry side of it, a number of smaller players are just getting onto the industry from that side of it without any entry barrier, as well as not ensuring that the projects get cleared off before they are even launched. So we've got number of cases, and property is one of the most litigated in any case as a segment.
God, consumer courts are overwhelmed. Civil cases continue for years. Pankaj, I know developers have a lot of concerns, and I'll come to that. But make me understand. I mean, we've got cases. I don't want to name developers from the largest in the country. We are also talking about cases where buyer-seller agreements are completely stacked against the buyer. We're talking about cases where projects were launched without clearances, and now the buyers have been just left out to dry. They've been told, we'll shift you sometime into our new project. They're last in the priority list, and we're talking about a big developer who's busy launching films and not taking care of that. So, and these are not the small ones that we're talking about, Neeraj. These are guys who are talking about transparency, who are talking about making the business fair, but it isn't happening. So, it's good?
It's good. It's great.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't see why developers who claim to be good, they should not welcome this. In fact, he made a very important point that this, after a long time, creates some entry barrier in this sector. Right now, we see that there's no entry barrier at all. Anybody can become a developer. There is no entry barrier at all. And there is no accountability. You can get away with anything, and so and it's not a level playing field between good developers and bad developers. So at least now the good developers can really, who stick to the norms, who are good to their customers, who are transparent, they will hopefully do much better than the ones who have been getting away scot-free. So that's the reason for the smile. The half smile is,
yes,
I wish that
there are concerns.
I wish that the bill, the draft bill that I had read, had a stronger force measure kind of situation incorporated into it. It's very good that you are penalizing developers for not delivering. It's very good that they're being taken to task. There, in fact, even criminal provisions, they can be jailed. But how many NOCs we need to take? I mean, if I propose to deliver a project in 3 years, there are hundreds of unforeseen things which happen. There are some of them are like commercial things which I should have incorporated, but more than 50% of those are government initiated.
Pankaj,
but one does not get approvals.
But you know that there are issues with NOC. So why, my biggest problem is why promise to deliver in 3 years when you know it could take up to four and a half years?
What if the goalpost gets shifted during and it's not unheard of. The government changes norms during the course of construction. Right. What happens then? I mean, these are things which have not been addressed at all, and it's the developer who goes to jail because of no fault of his. So these are things that, we need a healthy real estate sector. We do not want to kill the developer is not the villain here.
Yeah.
So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Yes, the good developers, yes, it's good for them, but some of them are also going to bear the brunt of the excesses of the unscrupulous developers. Everybody is being painted with the same brush here. And I think that it is ultimately going to lead to restricting of supply. It's going to lead to increase in prices. The cost of compliances is going to go up.